Hey dudes, what's up? My name is Levanta and this is Autistic Success. And today I want to talk about whether an autistic person should study science or engineering or actually not. Because this is probably the most common career path for autists, at least in media and entertainment. In movies and series, if autists are displayed, they are always like some kind of Rayman type weirdo. Or they are actually like some hyper nerds, like let's say in Big Bang Theory, some engineers or scientists. And I myself am an ex-scientist with a PhD in chemistry and chemical engineering background. And my answer to this question is whether you should study science as an autistic person, not necessarily. So hear me out. I think one thing is that you like, let's stick with chemistry. And another thing is then the chemical industry or your career path afterwards, after, let's say, 5 years of studies. So I think the most important thing that you have to do before committing to a university course, a degree, let's say in this case chemistry, is that you try to look into that actual career path, how it's going to look like. So yeah, obviously if there are some open office days or possible invitations to at factories or universities or academical stuff, go there and see how the actual daily life and how the actual lived experience of people doing that career path, which is going to be available with you for with your degree, how they are enjoying that career path, what their prospects are. And then you will have a much more detailed image of the whole career itself. I would even say that if it's not really available for you or you're too shy to go, let's say, to a factory or a university staff or other direct in-person experience, at least look into the experience, even on YouTube, from people who have studied this path and actually are in the career. I'm sure there are hundreds of or maybe thousands of videos of people, let's say, who have studied chemistry and who have become chemists, either in academia or, let's say, chemical engineers, and they are going to tell their experience honestly, and then you can make an image. So I would say, yes, this is the very first task, to actually look into the actual career path. What people say, how they live, do they enjoy it, do they not, and what your lived day-to-day experience is going to be more or less like if you decide to eventually study that course which you want, and then you get to the chosen career path which you want, because it's not the same. So I can tell you that in my career path or in my experience, I was really into chemistry. I decided to go study first environmental engineering and then chemical engineering. I was not really sure about chemical engineering per se. I loved chemistry, but I already knew even back then that I didn't want to work in a lab, like all this nasty, noisy, smelly stuff. I didn't even know back then I was autistic, but I already had like a strong sense that I love the theory. I'm really good at chemistry, but I love studying it, but I don't see myself in some nasty lab environment. So either way, I eventually did study that, and I liked parts of it, but I really quickly realized that the chemical industry per se itself is really not for me. And this is why I want to come to the second point is, sure, you have looked into that, you think, okay, I looked into this, it still sounds nice, it still sounds good, I can make reasonable amount which I want for my lifestyle to live, good. The second point is then make a list of your skills and skill sets and strengths and weaknesses. I know it's probably very, very, very difficult. This is probably the most difficult point at 18 years old, because you don't know yourself too well. But still, at least try to think of where you are really good at, or what you're really good at, and where you really struggle at. And also what kind of environments in your experience have supported you and what kind of environments have not supported you. Because this is going to make or break it for you. For me, it was also always the environment and the people themselves, not the work. The work, I would say, even as a chemical engineer or even in R&D, I've been an R&D leader, research and development, you would expect that it's going to be very interesting. It's not. So the work itself is probably going to be boring, but that's fine. You can do that. It's not a big deal. It can be you can find nice things about everything. But the environment, the company structure or academical environment, and the people around you are going to make or break for you. So this is why I think it's very, very important to think about what your strengths and weaknesses are, how well you can deal with people, how well you can deal with, let's say, a chaotic lab environment where you have to be on time, relatively very, very strongly controlled environment where everything you do needs to be documented. You need to dress up. You need to be there. You really have to follow a very strict and tight protocol. How well you can do that? How much creativity you want? Are you like a creative type person, or more like you like following the routines and you don't mind not necessarily changing anything and just following on? So really, this is super important point, that actually you try to make a list of your strengths, weaknesses, and where you're really good at, and what kind of your talents and skills you really want to use that, because this is gonna make or break. As I said, for me, I really didn't know back then that I was so creative, or I really wanted to explore my creativity that much as I do now. And this is, for instance, why I realized the first time after my bachelor's, I went to work for industry for a year, a low-level engineer job. And that was the point where I realized that I hate corporate. I don't like it, because I'm much more creative and much more independent than I thought I was, or I didn't know myself at all at 18. So I realized it very quickly on that, okay, good, I can do it. People are even satisfied, but I hate it. So it really quickly turned out to be a dead end for me. And then I gravitated towards academia, so went master's and then PhD, because I wanted to stay in academical science or academical structures and science. And then I realized there that, yeah, actually this is more interesting. The job in academia, like scientific research, is actually interesting, but you are always on the verge of complete precariousness. Your contracts are very, very short and unstable, and pay is literally very, very bad or non-existent often. So you're going to be severely underpaid and always fighting for contracts. So like a very, very unstable and difficult lifestyle. And also in academia, the job actually is interesting. This is a really good part. And sense and meaning, I would say not that much, but more than corporate probably. But the academical structure and politics is something which I would never have encountered or expected back then. And this is what made me hate it after like 2 years into my PhD, and quit it eventually after finishing my PhD. So yet again, it was not the job itself or not the work, because it was even creative and interesting compared to corporate, but the whole political structure, the whole hierarchical structure, the whole reputation thing, the whole speaking, choosing the right words, and trying to please everybody and fitting into very, very strong, very old school, very conservative structures, where actually your real output has some importance, but the way you talk, the way you write, the way you express yourself, and the way you fit into and actually agree with people and fellow scientists, and also the way you network, so again, social skills, so like interpersonal skills, they're going to have probably a higher effect on your success as a scientist than your actual strengths. So yet again, it was not the work itself, but it was the structure, it was the people, it was the politics, the hierarchies. So this is why I think this is really, really important to figure out more or less, even if you don't know yourself too well, what you want and what kind of environment you can imagine for yourself. And then maybe at the third point is, sure, obviously try to take into consideration also like realistic expectations. So depending on your country or living situation or financial situation, can you actually afford to go to uni? Can you not? Can your parents pay for it, or at least to be able to study and not have to work through that? Or would you have to work for it through that? And then will you have actually enough energy and time and mental capacity to work and study? Because even studying itself is super hard. So I would also say really take into consideration practical aspects, financial situation, living arrangements. And in this point, I would also say long-term career prospects, because, okay, let's say you like the environment, it matches well with your strengths, but now, especially in the age of AI and in this age of rapid political, economical turbulence and change and completely changing societies and job fields, I would say, sure, nobody can really extrapolate or imagine or anticipate what they're going to be doing in 20 years, but at least try to look at current trends in your industry. So let's say if you want to go into pharma or like oil processing or oil engineering, then look into that, what the possible stage of this industry is going to be in the next 10 to 15 years, let's say 10 years. It's not that far, but it's reasonably long enough for you to establish your career, because they are in serious change as well. I would say for this, try to use AI. It's reasonably good to describe and to find out some possible future scenarios about your career choice, but definitely also consider the next 5 to 10 years at least. And then obviously by the time you're going to change so much that you might completely change in your life, complete directions. But try to look for the first 10 years, if it's even reasonable that you're going to have a job and a job that's suitable for you. This is also, for example, the same in academia, which is insanely bloated, insanely saturated. Salaries are very low, too many academics and too few positions. So try to look into these realistic sides of also your career choice, and then act accordingly. So I would definitely not say don't choose science or don't go into science, but this picture portrayed by media that autistics are scientists is the biggest BS, because I have seen, not many, but I have seen some autistics in academia, for instance, who themselves told about them that they were autistics. Me, for example, for myself, I never came out as an autistic in my academic environment because I was just struggling to survive. But I did meet back then a few people who were openly autistic. And while they were more or less successful professionally, almost all of them had severe mental issues, academia, and severe lifestyle mismatch with academic structure. So this is at least what I have seen. So there are successful academics, for example, or successful autistics in corporate R&D, but it's not that straightforward as it's portrayed by the media. And I would say it really depends on your own personal skills and needs. As I mentioned, for myself, I didn't know who I was. I didn't even know I was autistic back then when I chose to study chemical engineering. And eventually, as I went along this path, I was always jumping between academia and corporate, and then corporate and academia. And then eventually I realized I've been to both many times in many different countries, many different environments, and I hate both of them. So eventually I quit everything, and now I am learning coding and experimenting with some projects and entrepreneur ventures. But yeah, so eventually it didn't work out as I expected, and I have changed so much that I quit all of these directions which I set out at the beginning. So I don't want to talk here too long, but the gist is here: look into the desired career path, and not only the studies themselves, but actually people who are doing what you want to do after the studies. Yeah, so talk to academic staff, professors, or actually postdocs. It's better because that's more like the reality. Talk to engineers who actually work or have worked in your industry, where you want to go. YouTube is a very good source for this. And then also try to make a list of your strengths and weaknesses, and try to find out, or even use the AI for that, whether your strengths and weaknesses could align well with that career path, with those work environments, with the people, with the industry, with the labs, whatever, or not. Or if so, then in what cases. And also realistic aspects, whether you can even pay for it, or you can go to such a course or such a faculty where you live, and then even you have jobs in your country, let's say, for instance. So yeah, this is what I just wanted to talk about today. I hope I could help. And if you have further questions, or if you want further advice or further insights about academia or corporate R&D, I am planning to do a few more videos on this, because I've experienced both for way too long. So yes, I'm really keen on hearing your experience in the comments. Let me know how you have already chosen, or whether you're considering choosing something like this. And I would say see you in the next one. Take care, and bye-bye.